I think now we have a good representative of members who have joined in. Good morning, everyone, and I do hope that you're all well. We started off our training on Monday with understanding the digital economy, and yesterday we had our second session on unpacking the taxation of the financial technology and what that means. So today, the third day, we do have Mr. Kiiza Africa, who will be sharing with us, trying to put the digital economy into perspective, linking it to tax, but also trying for us to try to understand what that means for that trade team and what the tax justice activists need to look out for. I remember yesterday there are some issues that were raised by the participants. I could post one here. One of it was trying to understand how the CAFTA protocol on e-commerce is being negotiated. What are those silent issues we believe can be addressed in this protocol? Enhance DRM, but also let the digital economy thrive. Today, we could make it a little bit different. Maybe we could also try to hear from you. What are some of the questions that you want to be addressed in this engagement or this session? You could just type one issue, one question. The topic is trying to understand I know the chat has gone off, trying to understand the digital economy in line with what is discussed in the trade policies or the trade practices. So from your end, and maybe before we call Africa on board, what do you want him to address? What do you want to understand? Just one question. Just have 1 minute.
Morning.
Morning.
Come again.
As we start this session, I've requested participants to
we are on the
Hello?
On the first floor. First floor.
Stephen.
Regina, I don't think Stephen was.
Yes, Africa. Maybe in the meantime, I could hand over to you and you take us through the session. Maybe the chats questions will come through as you project, as we discuss.
Okay, thank you so much, Regina and colleagues, participants, everyone. Good morning. I am so happy to be here to share this space with you. My name is Africa Kiiza, and I lead the team on trade and investment. And today, yes, again, that's where we find the issues of digitalization and digital trade. So that is what I'll be speaking to you. I take note of the questions that Regina had raised, and I'll be speaking to them as we progress with our presentation. I hope I'm being audible. I saw the question of African Continental Free Trade Area, how e-commerce is, the protocol on e-commerce is being addressed, and what are some of the key issues there. I also saw a question regarding the OECD process on e-commerce and taxation, or digitalization and taxation. So those are some of the two aspects which I will be speaking to. Allow me to share my screen to be able to, okay, perfect. Some ground rules I will be, just to say that I will be, I prefer having an interaction and a dialogue than just a teach-in. So I'm afraid that I will be, let me put you on alert that I will be calling upon us during the presentation to be able to interact with us and to be able to share your views during the discussion and even before the Q&A session comes on board. So this morning we'll be talking about, we'll be looking at trying to make sense of digitalization or e-commerce and trade, while trying to look at the key issues, trying to understand and appreciate the key issues, but most importantly, the contestations, or those what we call those that we call the outstanding issues, those that we need to be watchful, those issues that we need to be watchful over, and then try to give some proposals on how do we best, as tax advocates and activists and tax experts, how do we best engage into the discussion in this aspect. Just I want to again first clarify, often you might have heard, surprisingly including government, confusing digitalization and digitization. Those two are very different things, though they speak to one another. To note that digitization comes from digitalization. Digitalization is a whole system that looks at the aspects of artificial intelligence, internet, that looks at aspects of e-business, government procurement, and so there is a very big difference between digitalization and digitization. Digitization is just the process of putting into play the digitalization parameters. So often watch out for those contradictions when we are listening to this government. But anyway, let us start briefly by looking at what we call digitalization, which falls under the what we now call the fourth industrial revolution. You will remember that when you look at development policy and development anthropology, or the history of development, just like there has been that evolution of humanity, there has also been evolution of development. Remember the time when we had the Stone Age era? At that time, it was simple tools that were very critical, that were resourceful and valuable. Then we went into the steam era and the fire era. That was almost like the second, was the first phase of development, industrialization. Then we had the third industrial revolution, where we saw. Can we please mute for those who are not speaking? Moderator, please help me mute those who are not speaking. Then we have the fourth industrial revolution, where we see an infusion of electricity, and again some form of automation, where we saw the rise of computer economy, the rise of internet, but not to the big extreme. And when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution, that's where we see artificial intelligence, robotics, the future of robots. For those who are passionate about the future of jobs, you will appreciate the fact that there is fear that robots, as we embrace artificial intelligence, robots will be able to take over some of our jobs. It has been experienced already in South Africa and the developed world. For example, aspects of banking, aspects of culinary, those in the cooking sector, and in the movie industry. So you find that again, people have been losing out on jobs, because, including photography, because robots have taken over. That is artificial intelligence. Again, the future, of course, of production, both human production, but also commercial production in terms of trade, services, is going to change in the fourth industrial revolution. At the onset, we need to know that while, for example, the biggest raw materials or valuable resources currently, when you hear the Minister of Finance speak, he will tell you, we are waiting for our oil. When we start exploiting our oil, blah, 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 you will hear. So we have often talked about Africa and Uganda as being natural resource endowed, as having that valuable resource. While that is very true, but that natural resource will not help us to be competitive in the digital economy, in the fourth industrial revolution. Because in the fourth industrial revolution, where we are seeing the future of artificial intelligence and the future of robots, the most valuable resource is data. Not internet data, but what we call metadata or big data. And what is that big data? When you are logging in, when you're creating an Instagram account, I see colleagues here who are famous on TikTok. When you're creating a TikTok account, when you're creating a Gmail account, you are asked to provide your data, your name, those test security questions, your age, ethnicity, and all that. But again, also, when you are using, let's say, SafeBorder or Uber, or when you buy something from Jumia, you realize that, or when you buy something from Jumia Food, you realize that when you buy, let's say, a handbag from Jumia, they, again, in subsequent, even when you're logged onto YouTube or Facebook, they will tailor adverts based on the previous purchases that you've made. I don't know whether you've experienced that, but that is what happens with data, because it is made possible. Jumia will be able to know, or Facebook or Amazon will know that that Mr. Felix Okecho loves, let's say, crocodile skin shoes, and they start advertising to you based on that data. So the most valuable resource now is who controls this big data that they get, that they collect from us. And again, to underscore that this data, we give it willingly. We just agree to the terms and that's it. We do not control the data. We don't process it. We do not own it. So yes, we own it, but we don't have the mechanisms of owning it. So in the fourth industrial revolution, our oil, our gold, our diamonds are not important. What is important is who is able to collect the data, who can use that data to process it and interpret it to suit consumer trends and taxation trends, but also who is able to own that data. That is where we are contesting ourselves with. So it will be quite often that when you hear a talk about digital economy, about e-commerce, about taxation of the digital economy, the issue of big data will often come around, and that is the issue you need to look out for, about why big data, why control over big data and data flows is very important to propel us into an inclusive digital value chain. Okay. So why would we talk about e-commerce or digitalization in the industry 4.0? Because again, now with even the advent of COVID-19, talks about the narrative of embracing e-commerce, embracing internet has been very highly mooted. So digitalization has continued to increase in defining our social and economic and even political activities. Very often in Africa, we have seen revolutions happen and coups happening because of being supported by, thanks to internet, thanks to the digital economy, thanks to social media. Very often we have seen economies prospering, or economies being affected because of how they are connected to the digital economy. So digitalization is continuing to define our economic, social, and even political activities, that an artist can hold a concert online, that we have digital content creators who just create content online and they earn millions of money in just one post or in just one impression of their content. We look at the social sectors like education and health, where there is increasing embracement of artificial intelligence into the health sector, into undertaking complex surgeries, into tutorship. Now with COVID-19, we are talking about teaching online. So digitalization is on the rise. And that again is what is defining our trade. And digitalization, or the digital economy, comprises of a number of aspects. You will have like new technologies. You will talk about automation. Automation is where you find that, for example, if you go to, let's take an example of the cotton sector, that you get your cotton from the farm, and the only thing you will do is just to get the cotton from the farm. You have combine harvesters, then they put it into the machines. The machines produce it into yarn, then they produce it into fabric. So all that automation, that there is continued reduction of presence of physical presence of human beings in the production chain, where robots and machines and artificial intelligence is taking over. But again, we have aspects of artificial intelligence and, like I said, big data. So we keep seeing digital economy manifesting itself in the sectors like trade and tax, but also in services and so it is better to say that it is right to say that everyone is under the digital press or at what stage digital revolution as individuals, but also a country and as a continent. When you look at this our table, it speaks to what I was talking about, that while we have, for example, Uganda as an agrarian economy with natural resources like oil and gas, under the digital economy, we are looking at how do we digitalize agriculture? How do we mechanize? How do we automate agriculture, including agriculture production and value addition? And again, how do we automate our natural resources? In industry, where again, we are looking at light manufacturing, our current economy is about light manufacturing, but under digitalization, the question is, how do we digitalize our manufacturing sector? How do we revolutionize our industry to ensure that we are connected into the global digital value chains? Again, it goes again to services. I spoke about to health services. I spoke about to education services. I spoke about transport services where you can now purchase a ticket online, where you can, you can access you can do almost all your banking needs just by a tap of your phone, of your bank app on your phone. You don't necessarily have to go to the bank to be able to undertake anything. So again, we have forms, for example, in Kigali, Rwanda, where drones are being used through GPS to be able to transport medical equipments like blood transfusions and vaccines and drugs into hard to reach areas. So there is already an embracing of digitalization in the services sector and economy. So let us look at the core issue that has brought us here, e-commerce. And like I said, e-commerce is one of the components, electronic commerce or online trading, to say, is one of the components of the bigger digitalization stratum. Because remember, we talked about automation, robots, and all. E-commerce is one of the components of the digital economy, and like real commerce, like real trade, it has an aspect of parameters of production where you can produce goods online. You just get your phone, you create digital content, that is production. You distribute it online, you get that digital content if it is a TikTok does, or if it is a news flash or update, you post it on your social media. That is distribution. And then marketing. Many people I'm sure all of us, our phones are full up with WhatsApp groups that have people advertising their products or even their statuses where they have a product and they put the amount. But again, when you look at, for example, now it is a new trend on Facebook where they have what they call Friday markets, where a popular person, like I often see Wekesa Amos every Friday, he is posting that his followers can be able to post their things that they are making online. So that is a form of marketing. Again, sale or delivery. And for sale and delivery, that's where we have platforms like Jumia Foods, Jumia itself, Chikubo Online, and all that. So all of these parameters, production of goods, distribution of goods, marketing of goods, sale and delivery of goods and services is done by electronic means. Consultancies is also one of the aspects of sale of services online by electronic means, that Right now, you can do a consultancy. You can do a consultants, and they don't need to see you physically. You deliver and you pay your money. So that is the parameter of e-commerce that we look at. And like we need to clarify, e-commerce has the online presence, and it has aspects of online shopping where you can go on Amazon, or you can go to Alibaba, you can go to Kiku, you can go to to even Masikini. I think there's Masikini in Uganda, and you shop. You can go to supermarkets and you do online shopping. You pay online. Quite often, those who are using platforms like Netflix and Showmax and all that, you've been able to pay electronically. Those who are using utilities, now you don't have to go to the bank to pay to umeme or to pay for national water. You just use your phone and you make your payments online. We have online auctioning. That's another form of e-commerce, internet banking, and online ticketing. Those that are into tickets, whether travel tickets, whether conference tickets, whether whether it is a music show that has tickets, you can now do it online. That is what we mean by e-commerce. So when you look at all these aspects, it is right to say that e-commerce is in high gear. And well, we need to understand the difference between e-commerce, or what we call digital trade, and the rules that are supposed to make this happen. They are not the same. They are not the same. And why? Because trade can be both developmental, but at the same time, it can be bad trade, depending on the agreements that we have in place. When you look at the current trade agreements and the rules that we are putting in place to promote e-commerce, they are being written and drafted and designed based on proposals and interests of the large big tech companies. And these big tech companies are like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Alibaba. Not Jumia, don't say Jumia. Jumia is not a big tech company. It is a dwarf when it comes to the world of digital corporations. So the rules that are being designed, both taxation rules, both trade rules, to support digital trade, e-commerce, or to support e-taxation, they are being designed based on proposals that are being given and that are being pushed hardly by these big technology giants, as mentioned. And that is where we are going, where we have problems, as I will be showing in the slides to come. Let us look at why, for example, would Amazon be interested in e-commerce. If you look at the pushers of e-commerce, it's not Africa. It's not Africa. It's the United States, the EU, and China. And they have a major reason as to why. Let us look at the top 10 e-commerce platforms. When you look at Amazon, they are in Seattle, and these were their sales. Google, Seattle, in the US, Alibaba and JD.com, they are all in China. Facebook, US, Netflix, US, Booking, those who do holidays understand Booking, where you can book a hotel and a travel ticket. So It is the biggest companies, online companies, that are pushing for e-commerce because they know that they control and dominate electronic commerce or digital trade. So when you are reading and you see that the United States and China are pushing for digital trade rules, don't be surprised as to why, because they know that they are already controlling the digital economy. And when you see Africa rushing, when you see Uganda rushing the discussion of digitalization, we have to create digital transformation. We have to, we have to do to support to embrace e-commerce. You should ask yourself, we don't have any listing of Ugandan or African-based digital economy platform. So you should ask yourself, why is Africa again? Because again, in trade, we have what we call the big pushers, who are big pushers, big takers of trade. If you can try to admit people so that they don't stop popping onto my screen, that is great. When I was talking about the interest of big corporations and countries, let's see, for example, why US is interested, the United States is interested in pushing for e-commerce rules. When you look at the United States, for example, this was in 2019. You can see that the total e-commerce sales by the United States were 8,883 billion US dollars, and that was 46% of their GDP share. The total of e-commerce percent was 90%. So you see that there is a lot that the United States stands to gain when it is pushing for e-commerce. Look at Japan, 61% share of GDP. Look at China, total sales in terms of business to business, business to consumer, share of e-commerce. So you find that Japan, USA, China, Germany, South Korea, and the EU are controlling the whole of almost 99% of total e-commerce aspects. And that is why we need to at that very important. When we talk about e-commerce, digital trade, when you hear
maybe Africa.
Yes, please.
Perhaps I think there was a question from Henry in the chat.
Was a question?
The previous slide, yes.
On the previous slide, huh? Okay, let me look for the question. Do we have statistics for e-commerce in Uganda? That's the question. Move towards education, developing digital infrastructure building. These were more comments. Regina, what was the question? Hello?
Okay, I'm going to read the 2 comments. I will start with
please.
Henry. Do we have statistics commerce for Uganda?
Okay. Yes, it is in the subsequent slide. So I will respond to that in my presentation. The other one.
Of course, Rubu Julius wanted to know more about the legal frameworks for e-commerce in Africa.
Yes, I'm going to go that.
Okay. We had a comment from Joan as well. that electrification in most of Africa is below 30%, in other countries way less. Internet, among others, require this. This is a big issue and ought to be addressed. In the move towards developing digital infrastructure beyond what is currently there, the rural-urban issue has to be taken into account. Awareness should to these rural issues as well. So it was a comment. Then Mugabe, what are the causes and consequences of language barrier?
Language barrier.
Yes, it's not clear. Maybe Ivan could come in and share some more light on that.
All right. Okay. Yeah. And again, maybe the issue of language barrier is the fact that, and he's raising a very important question, by the way, because many of, like I was saying, many of the big e-commerce platforms are foreign and they use foreign languages. You won't find an e-commerce platform using Uganda. Even surprisingly, our very own, like Chikubo Online, Nakasero Market Online, you know, they do not speak, they don't use Uganda or Kiswahili. They again on English. So you will find that the issue of the fact that for an SME or for a trader who is not conversant with English, then they are not, and they are unable to use these, even the local platforms, to be able to buy, but also sell their products. So you're right. The consequences of language barrier are that it increases on what we call the digital divide. Just like you've been talking about taxation divide in terms of, in terms of income divide, income inequalities, there's also what we call the digital divide. And it is the digital divide that I'm going to talk about now before we go into the specific proposals of e-commerce that are going to perpetuate this digital divide or the digital inequality. So when you look at the
maybe one more. One more question from Wanje. Do we have a comprehensive statistics center for the East African region, and does it cover updated e-business trends in the region, including individual countries per se?
No, we don't. No, we don't. And that is the more reason why we need to look into Africa and EAC's preparedness when it comes to e-commerce. Even Uganda, URI would not tell you how much Uganda, for example, lost, or how much Uganda contributed towards e-commerce sales in 2020, or even this half of the year. And because, again, this has a result of what I'll be talking about in terms of data. You know, I talked about data, the importance of data in informing e-commerce. Who owns data? Who is able to share data? Who is able to utilize the data or manipulate it is the one that is going to benefit from e-commerce. So let us look at when John was talking about the issue of infrastructure. And without infrastructure, digital trade, even digital taxation cannot happen. Infrastructure-wise, to be able to undertake digital trade and digital taxation of e-commerce, you need not only electricity, but also what we call internet infrastructure. And that is the bandwidth in terms of internet speed, in terms of internet access, in terms of internet affordability. You will often hear me criticizing government over the fact that it was illogical, and I would still say it. It is unfortunate that you are placing a 12% tax on internet data, on data, and again that you are pressing, the things of levies on online transactions. That is because, again, that does not address the challenge we are having. When you look at Africa as a whole, Uganda inclusive, 75% of our population is offline. We are not connected to internet. And by internet, when we talk about internet connectivity, we are not talking about where Regina's last scene will be 4 days ago or a month ago. We are talking about reliability of this connection. And this reliability is determined, this 75% of the entire population in Africa being offline, it has a number of issues in terms of what we call the 3 dimension, the 3 A's, like 3 and capital A of internet. Because internet is the live stream of the electric economy. And for that internet, it should be what we call available. That is the first A. It should be accessible. Apart from being available, it should be accessible. Accessibility is, for example, now where you find that when we go into elections, internet is shut off, it's shut down. We are now entering into almost a year when Facebook has been closed. That's the issue of accessibility. Even if it is available, can you access it? And most importantly, affordability. Can you afford internet? Uganda is the second ranking country in East African community to have the biggest cost of internet after Burundi, with Rwanda and Kenya scoring significantly lower as one of the best countries ranking in terms of affordability of internet. Because you need internet to be able to transact online. And when you look at the share of our internet or of our e-commerce as Africa, again, just like usual trade, Africa's trade has been, Africa's share of global trade, even in traditional trade, has been between 1 to 2% percentage share. And now even on the internet, that has not changed. E-commerce, Africa's share is almost 1.1% of the overall global e-commerce. So again, you see that Africa is not well prepared for e-commerce. And when you look at on the infrastructure and preparedness of Africa, the digital trade or e-commerce, fixed broadband penetration. Broadband, this is high-speed internet, so that if you are downloading a 20 gigabytes document, you should not spend more than a minute or more than 30 seconds. Our fixed broadband penetration is at 1%, which is still so low. And that's why you find that, for example, URA cannot be able to, again, engage on e-commerce if manipulation of these big data entries cannot be supported because of our weak internet bandwidth. Only 5 least developed countries in Africa, don't worry, Uganda is not among, or we should be worried rather, Uganda is not among those. Only 5 LDCs in Africa have achieved the Broadband Commission target on affordability of internet. Uganda is not among.
Are there any
is not among.
ESC, Africa?
Rwanda is the one, Kenya is the second. So you find that only 5 LDCs, Kenya is not an LDC. The only LDC we have is Rwanda now, that is being ranked as having achieved Broadband Commission target on affordability. So you see, that is already the challenge that we are talking about in infrastructure. And again, our e-commerce, again, is contributing currently to what we currently call financial hemorrhage. We are just buying imports. Majority of the things we're using for e-commerce is to buy rather than selling, which is again creating the same inequalities we are talking about, and which again creates the challenge, the challenges to RM, which I'll be.
Africa, can I interrupt you a bit?
Yes, please, go ahead.
There are some questions in the chat box.
Let's have them.
How are platforms inclusive of the blind and the deaf Ugandans or people That is one of
they're exclusive, and that is why we need to have a strategy that takes into cognition of not only people with the special category of people like PWDs, but also the women, the gender component. Because again, if we look at the statistics of data in terms of connectivity, again, majority of the women are offline than men in terms of accessing internet and this e-commerce. So yes, there isn't really a cognizant of people with special abilities or with disabilities into e-commerce and the platforms.
Okay, we also have
Yes.
John who's appreciating your discussion. Then Mwanje, thanks Africa and Regina. PSE update. Please update us on the relevance of this EA development. I think EA might mean, I don't know, EA.
East Africa? East Africa?
I think EA, okay, East Africa Development Bank, beyond financial and beyond financial.
Okay, all right.
Investment, if it is also, if it covers such business statistics in the region.
No. Okay, all right. I will cover that. I'll be,
you cover that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Ivan, is internet a right or a privilege?
That's a very big question. Can I answer that right away?
Yes, then we shall go to the next one.
In what we call the fourth generation human rights, no, that's the issue. Uganda, we are even yet to achieve the primary human rights, the fundamental human rights of, right to food, right to what. We are even yet there. But there's now what we call a fourth generation human rights. And the internet, the right to internet is now regarded popularly. It is not yet enshrined into the UN Declaration on Human Rights, but it is popularly regarded as a fourth generation right, human right, the right to affordable, accessible, and available internet is one of the now recognized human rights, because of the fact that we have integrated internet into our lives are interwoven with internet, with data, with artificial intelligence. That they in some countries, their lives depend on the presence and the availability of internet. So yes, whereas for Uganda we have the luxury of closing down Facebook because it is creating Rugambo, or taxing social media because we are engaging in Rugambo. Other countries are embracing, see that not as a luxury, but rather as a necessity of having internet. So those are the contestations that we need to be private about. Another question, Regina?
What causes the low broadband penetration in Africa? Could it be the population or the weather?
Thank you. It again goes back, of course, to it's not even the weather. It is about to fixed lines. How is our bandwidth? How are our internet optic cables? Again, you realize that our internet is not generated from here. Our internet, the satellite internet, is dependent on the cables that are flung way back from the United States and pass through the Indian Ocean, deep down the ocean, and reach Mombasa and end up finding their way into Africa, like you and Uganda inclusive. You often find that, for example, whenever there have been disruptions in the Indian Ocean and into the major oceans, there have been a problem, especially for countries that depend on those internet cables, like majority of African countries. So the fact that we are dependent on the internet infrastructure is one of the reasons why why there's still low bandwidth in the country. And again, it goes back to the issue of research and development, but most importantly, financing. Countries are financing now to look into technologies and innovations that can take them to even 5G. Countries are now going to 6G. Uganda again is still on 2G, 3G, struggling to get 4G. 5G is still really a fantasy. So those are some of the dynamics as to why we have what we have right now. Another question, Regina?
Okay. Jerry still thinks that, I don't know if he still thinks or he has changed his mind that internet is okay.
Internet is what?
A privilege, not a right.
Yes, it depends on how one sees it. Like I've said, there are many of these many of our lives, for example, now are manipulated. Well, if I may use that word, but they are dependent on internet. Then give an example in the United States and Norway. Right now, when you wake up, your bed can tell you, maybe it can read, artificial intelligence can make your bed read your temperature, body temperature, and advise on the prescriptions. And when to advise on the prescriptions, it will then contact your pharmacy, local pharmacy, and order for the prescriptions. And then after getting the local pharmacy, it gives its data, it gives it the price, and then your artificial data or your data then informs your bank, and your bank initiates payment. And then after initiating the payment, the pharmacy then drops the medication to your door. That kind of lifestyle, again, makes internet not a luxury, but rather a necessity. Where you find situations where countries have to share data in terms of data intelligence, and in terms of science, in terms of looking at finding cures and experiments, in terms of understanding the weather patterns and climate patterns, understanding weather phenomena and all that. Internet becomes, again, we have allowed ourselves to be integrated into internet, but it is often, you are often out of place if you find a place without connection. And I'm sure majority of us, when we go into restaurants, the first thing we ask is, can I have password for Wi-Fi, before even looking at the menu. Yes, of course, that itself is right, is very wrong, because again, it integrates us into a system where we are only amateurs, but also where we are not fully developed to be able to compete. Another question, and then I continue, Regina, because some of the questions will be addressed in my subsequent slides.
Okay, just maybe to hurry up, right here under internet. Okay, this is just a comment from Manje. Right and prepare internet regarded as a basic human right accordingly. Something learning today. Then from Sheila, these are just Julius, with poor infrastructure like poor electricity, inadequate bank services in rural areas. Do you think e-commerce will yield results in Uganda or ESC?
Let me answer that. Let us look at the screen. You can see my screen, right? This is a lecturer teacher. Sorry, this is a teacher in Ghana, Accra. He was teaching computer studies from a blackboard, a chalkboard. You're teaching children, you're teaching students computer applications, the basic word processing window. What are the features? How does it work? You are teaching it using chalkboard. So this already shows you the reality. If we don't have the basic infrastructure, the basic equipment for Africa to be able to participate in even understanding e-commerce, then we cannot talk of being integrated. Regina, I wanted to look at the contestation so that we can be able to bring the discussion right home as we are planning to conclude for more engagements, right? Can I do that in the next 3 minutes?
Yes, please do.
Perfect. So, including the African continental, I got the question that was asked. African Continental Free Trade Area, and even at the World Trade Organization. What are some of these rules or provisions that they are pushing for to support e-commerce or to support online trading? One, they are pushing for prohibition of national regulations. And what does that entail? They don't want custom duties. Now, how are you going to collect taxes if the rules do not allow custom duties to be able to track? So Amazon is saying, no, we should not allow for custom duties. We should have a completely liberalized new trade route. Just get your document, order for your shipping, order for your equipment on Amazon from the US, and it should find its way into your house. No involvement of customs. Again, no local content in electronic transmissions. Because you see, electronic. Sorry. Okay. So you find that the rules that they are pushing for, they don't require local presence. You see, again, our taxation policies are in a way that we tax those that are on our radar, those that we can easily, that are physically present. We are yet to reach an extent of taxing the virtual space. Forget this, this OTT and the and mobile transactions and the infamous proposed mobile banking tax. But the companies, the big tech companies are saying, no, we don't have to be obliged to be locally present in Uganda if we are to operate in Uganda. And these developed countries like Uganda were saying, no, it is important that, for example, Amazon establishes or Uber establishes a shop in Uganda, because that helps us in monitoring and tracking them, which also facilitates taxation, easy taxation. But they are rejecting that. So they don't necessarily have to be present. Again, they are pushing for no mandatory localization barriers in terms of, we see one of the aspects to be able to understand, for example, and why it is difficult for URA and Minister of Finance to tax, for example, Facebook, is because there's what we call source code disclosure, that if I buy online, URA should be able to detect Africa has bought this kind of good from Amazon or from Jumia or from Alibaba at this amount of money. It can only be made possible if Amazon, the platform where I have bought it from is willing to share the data with URA, with the tax body of a country where I am coming from. Unfortunately, they are saying no. The rules, no, we should not be compelled to share our source code, to disclose our source code. And excuse me, and this creates aspects where you've been seeing the rise of illicit financial frauds, like what we now call, apart from while we have been seeing illicit financial frauds and tax havens in the traditional trade, now in the digital economy, we are seeing data havens. That countries that were like Maldives, that were still, and Mauritius and Panama, that were havens of taxes, are now again acting as the data havens. Because like I said, you can only benefit from e-commerce if you control, or if you can access, or if you can process the big data. So now countries or individuals, the rich individuals, are now hiding their data in the form of data havens, which is making it very hard for African countries, especially, to be able to understand the right amount of sales and the right amount of data regarding sales and all that, to be able to tax. Again, African countries have been arguing that, you see, to be able to tax but also trade online, we need to compel the developed countries to share their technology, to transfer technology. We need to negotiate technology transfer in this in trade rules. And the owners of these big companies are saying no, led by Facebook, surprisingly, and Amazon, saying no, we don't need to be compelled to transfer technology. So you find that, again, they are operating and there's no technology that is being transferred, which again weakens us further to be able to not only trade, but also be able to tax. I need to indicate that in Africa, only 5 countries dominate approximately 80% of e-commerce, and that is South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and Kenya, Egypt, and Morocco, with Rwanda springing up as one of the countries that are rapidly catching up. Don't ask me about Uganda. We are still finding. Again, like I indicated, another rule that they are pushing for is free data flows. That you allow data, whether it is sensitive, leave Uganda and let it be stored in foreign servers. This has been happening in the Stanbic Bank. There are data in terms of sales and other strategies and all. Stored every day, it is backed up automatically the South African-based servers, and Uganda does not know anything. Something I think was happening in MTN, and that's why His Excellency had to intervene in checking the data rights of this camera. So I think you see why we are saying internet should be a right. That again, it is hard for a country, under the current rules, it is hard for a country to intervene when data, even such data, is meant for spying on a country. It becomes very hard if there is free flow of data. So countries like African countries are pushing for rules that will make them possible to ensure that they control the data and that the data servers are domiciled in the host countries. That is to have local servers. Where it becomes again interesting, the issue of privacy and consumer rights. These things of leaking people's private affairs and all that is again because of lack of weak privacy and consumer rights. That we have often seen organizations like WikiLeaks of Assange that has been very stubborn in terms of raising information of people. So, and the issues of bank cards, debit card and credit cards fraud have been on the rise. So countries like African countries are saying, no, we need to have strong privacy and consumer rights. Now, like you are saying, who was asking that, is internet a right? It is now illegal, for example, to post your baby's photo on your Facebook account or your WhatsApp account without their consent. It is now, those are the 4th generation human rights we are talking about. It is again, for us who are doing advocacy, it is considered illegal and you can be punished if you send me an email without seeking for my consent. So let us be careful when we are adding people in the email groups and the WhatsApp groups. Someone can sue you. So it is always hard. It is if you belong, for example, to these EU-based networks, they have every year they send emails asking whether you wish to subscribe again to, that is the data protection right. And again, in terms of privacy, what extent can you be able to ensure that your personal data, you can easily access it? Let me take an example. In the beginning of last year, Safe Border shared our data to a USA company which specializes in analyzing and predicting the consumption trends of people. And it makes millions of money by understanding that so-and-so is going to be able to buy this in such and such time by forecasting. Safe Border earned a lot of billions. The country did not earn anything. That is Uganda. We did not earn anything as customers. But that was our data. Safe Border could only got that data from us. It couldn't have got it anywhere else. So that's the issue we're talking about, consumer rights. How are we protected when it comes to our rights and privacy? And again, the issues of e-signatures, countries are again looking at how do they streamline actual cross-border commerce in terms of e-signatures, prohibition of digital custom duties, and all of that. So when we look at the general implication of e-commerce rules in the World Trade Organization, but also in the African Continental Free Trade Area, they are going to increase access to markets. They are seeking for the rights to participate in the markets without restrictions. You may say that this is good, but for a country and a region which only one country is an e-commerce giant, this is not good. So it is important to regulate participation in markets in order to facilitate taxation, to facilitate trade. Again, the current rules will go against not have to pay taxes. That's why you hear, for example, the Minister of Trade and Minister of Finance saying, yeah, we are in discussion with the Facebook. It would have been the other way around. Facebook would have been in discussion, or Amazon should be discussing with the Ugandan government over how do we pay our fair rate of tax. Not Uganda demanding of them, but the current rules are making it impossible for the big internet players, the big e-commerce players, to be able to be eligible to pay their fair share of taxes. And that is again what they are pushing for. And they are not, obliged to contribute to community development. The big Alibaba or eBay can come here and do whatever it wants, whether it is affecting the community. They are not obligated to contribute. And most importantly, they are fighting for infinite supply of cheap labor that is stripped of its rights. I don't know that you remember the current discussion in 2019, towards the end of 2019, and at the beginning of 2020, from January to March, November 2019 up to March 2020, Amazon was being attacked because of failing to give its employees toilet breaks and lunch breaks. It was slaving away people, but earning billions of US dollars every day. So the current, again, rules are not favorable for labor rights. And again, control of data. They are taking away the right of the country to control data. And data is important, like I've indicated, to be able to undertake trade, able to fair taxation of players. This, I will be sharing these slides, and you will look at this table. It shows us what we need to do in terms of policy making, dialoguing, to create an inclusive e-commerce agenda for one that is incorporating taxation of digital platforms, that is supporting inclusive data policies, but also that one that is the rights in the digital. I'm concluding. When we look at the current e-commerce debate, it might have become so negative, but let me make it clear that e-commerce is now, or digitalization is a do and die affair. E-commerce is unstoppable, that's the truth. We are now interwoven, we are ingrained in the economy, so we cannot stop e-commerce or Industry 4.0. We cannot stop artificial intelligence in our workplaces, we cannot, but we can shape it. And that is why we need to look at how do we shape it, by putting in place rules that make it possible to support that. It requires three things to be able to integrate herself in e-commerce. That is access, affordability, and availability. The current rules that are binding e-commerce being pushed for by the giants who control internet, in order for them to secure rules that will consolidate their power against taxation, power against fair trade. Cost of taxes, which is very important and which we need to speak. Like I indicated, the current discussion of banning source code disclosure will make it more difficult to check cheating by companies in terms of their sales. And this will make it hard for them. Then the countries want to store our data outside our countries, and the countries end up, then countries like African countries will lose control over data. That again does not work for taxes. Ban on local presence requirements that that eBay does not necessarily have to be present in Kenya to be able to operate. It affects the capacity of African countries to tax, given that our taxation frameworks are still in the traditional mode of taxation, where we tax those companies and those businesses whom we have on our radar. And this have an implication on DRM and the contribution to provision of social services, because if you can't pay taxes, then how do you fund your growth? How do you create jobs? How do you bring about development? The burden, of course, ends up shifting domestically, that because we cannot create a lot of taxes from e-commerce platforms, we start choking people with taxes. Let me give this slide and I conclude. Let's look at how much Facebook made and Google, how they made in terms of revenues, profits, and taxes. This table, when you look at it, Facebook, in terms of its operations across the world, made profits of 13,515 million US dollars. 13,000 million US dollars. Facebook alone. And the profits of this 13,000, 7,000 million US dollars was taken by the US. The profit was taken by their domiciles in the USA. In terms of taxes remitted, Facebook paid to the foreign entities, including maybe Uganda and all that. It only paid 389 million in terms of its taxes, but it paid to the US 4,645 million US dollars. So you see that again, this is why we need local presence, because Facebook is in the USA, and that's why the USA can be able to tax it like this. So that's why we need local presence. That's why we need why we need fair rules in terms of taxation of the digital economy. And I go to the question of, again, you can look at Google, how Google was able to fare in the United States. Again, the share of revenue and taxation, while United States was able to get taxes of 12,000 million US dollars, the rest of the world only shared 1,700 million US dollars. So one country, like the United States alone, is taking almost 88% of profits in terms of profits and also taxes from these two example countries. So that's why we say, why do we need fair taxation rules? And it takes me to the question that was asked. OECD and its presence and its role in taxation. Well, unfortunately, OECD is like the United Nations. It makes prescriptions, and its prescriptions are best endeavors. They are not obligatory. Unfortunately, unlike like the World Trade Organization, where the rules are binding. So yes, OECD model, whereas it is providing for frameworks and for options of digital taxation, these are actually being violated in the binding processes, like the World Trade Organization. What am I saying? That the United States, just like we saw in the SDGs, the developed countries committed, for example, to ensure access to affordable vaccines for all. That is goal 7, I think goal 7. But you saw, you've been seeing what happened when COVID-19 came in. We are begging, they are actually refusing to give us the vaccines. They are refusing to give us the technology. The same for e-commerce. But at OECD level, they are just modalities that countries, if willing, can take to be able to facilitate digital taxation. But unfortunately, in processes where the rules are binding, the same countries are rejecting these rules and proposals. So it is important that whereas we focus on the OECD process, we should pay more caution and attention to what kind of rules we are negotiating at the African continental free trade area level, and what kind of e-commerce rules are we negotiating at the global level, like the World Trade Organization, because OECD rules are just in. And youth are important because the future belongs to the youth, and they are the so-called netizens or millennials, Generation Z, and important that they engage into discussions on e-commerce, a progressive e-commerce agenda that looks at fair taxation. So, I think we have reached the time allotted. I wish to stop here and welcome questions or comments and all that. I'm going to share with us the presentation, which Regina and able to.
Thank you very much, Africa, for the presentation. Please just use the reactions, how you feel, whether you want to clap, whether you're sad, whether you want to show some love. I see there are some emojis there. I don't know if they are coming through, Africa, from the participants. Yes, I can see Brenda. Okay, thank you, Africa, for sharing these insights. I think it's mixed. It's a mixed feeling, you know, you're both happy, and then of course there's food for thought on how that two are integrated. I know that we are having challenges, but I believe that, of course, some are yawning, some are worried. I understand, some are clapping. which is okay. I could just rush through some of the comments in the chat. And see, I don't know if you're able to see them from your end.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Africa, are you able to see the comments?
Yes, I am I'm going through them.
I know we stopped somewhere.
Yes, let me. Sorry, they were talking about I'm sorry about my internet. I apologize. Again, that is the reality. You can see. I mean, we are talking about e-commerce when even, I don't know whether you saw the question when we are looking at the post-budget dialogue. Huh? No, the budget conference for 2022-2023. Talking about embracing e-commerce, and you have such a poor sound and poor connection. These are the realities that we need to look into when we are looking at e-commerce, and that's why we say that internet is really a very important aspect. I see there was a comment from kind of CFTA protocol e-commerce is being negotiated. What are those silent issues? I think I indicated the issue of I hinted on this. The salient issues which I believe must be addressed in this protocol is the issue of local presence, the issue of technology transfer. Are we able to, can South Africa stop asking us to remit our data to its servers, our financial data? Its banks domiciled in Uganda, can they stop remitting their server, their data to the South African-based servers? Because again, that creates even actually jobs. You have data analysts and server hosts. So this creates jobs, but also it helps in creating opportunities for taxation. So the issue of local presence, data governance is very important. We need to look into that. The issue of local content, again, is something that we need to look into for DRM. Local content, I mean, in terms of what kind of platforms are we using? What kind of goods are we selling online? What kind of data is being stored locally? And what kind of people, in terms of the data analytics, whom are being employed? So the issue of employment is also important, and that is about local presence. So that is those are some of the issues we need to be careful about. And most importantly, for countries like Mauritius, which have been notorious to act as tax havens, I stand to be corrected. It is important to ensure issues of illicit financial flows and data havens are addressed in the AFCFTA protocol on e-commerce in order to support DRM. I'm seeing the issue of Andrew Bakura, who is talking about, good morning once again, progressive, okay, is thanking us just for the resourceful presentation. Julius Sarugu is asking, the legal framework for e-commerce in Africa. Yes, the legal framework for e-commerce in Africa is the current protocol that we are negotiating, but also the African Union in 2019, yes, no, 2020, it passed the Africa Digitalization Strategy, which has, again, it has weaknesses, but yeah, there's a framework at the African level. And again, also at the East African community, we have an Africa cross-border e-commerce trade strategy, regional strategy, which again is something that we need to engage on to ensure that at least those aspects are addressed. Electrification, yes, the issue of electrification by Joanna team, that's very brilliant indeed. If we are looking about building digital infrastructure beyond what is currently there, the rural-urban issue, the rural-urban divide needs to be tackled. Rural electrification should go hand in hand with the rural connection to the internet grid. Well, Joan, that is very true, but again, even if we have not even achieved the acceptable high-speed internet levels in the urban setup, I don't see how we are going to achieve that in the rural area. But yes, you're very right. We need to create that universal connection to internet. Do we have comprehensive? Yes, this was responded to. How are the e-platform inclusive of the brand? Yeah, we talked about that. They currently are not, both in their design, but also in their language, but also in their application. They are not. Even in the utilization, they are not inclusive of that. Okay, we talked about the issue of whether internet is a privilege or a right. We talked about what causes low broadband penetration with poor electricity infrastructure. We talked about a thing of infrastructure. Thank you so much, Sam Tumgarichli, for the compliments. Indeed, internet is supposed to be a right. Yes, internet is supposed to be a right. And really, for any politician or any analyst that talks about internet as being a privilege, to me, I think then that keeps us as what they say, that Africa is a latecomer to industrialization. And as it has been a latecomer to industrialization, Africa is binding herself to be a latecomer to digital transformation, to the digital economy. That is why we need to look into making the internet not only available and accessible, but also affordable. And that is why I know Regina might not agree to this, but that's why I completely disagree with the move by government of Uganda to tax internet connection. To me, I think that is being penny wise, but pound foolish. We are looking at the question about how can we promote e-commerce platforms without misusing them for tax avoidance. Exactly, Mugabe Ivan, that's a very big question. And the only way we can do that is through governance of data. By Uganda government to be able to govern the data. That when I talk about governing the data, not internet data, please, again, like I said, big data, personal data that is generated. If the data that you generate by subscribing to Google, how is it stored? How is it collected? Who collects it? Who stores it? Who manipulates it? Who interprets it? And who uses it? Until it stops being only Google and the big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, that are responsible for our data, then we cannot stop tax avoidance and tax evasion. We'll only be into the continue the song by URA that we are talking, not even negotiating. We are talking to Facebook, to Google, to be able to accept, to engage into discussion about e-commerce. So control and governance of big data is an important aspect, because like we said, data is the raw material, or it is the heart and the lifeblood of the digital economy and its aspects of trade and taxation. Henry talks about the issue of, I think the internet banking tax exists. I recently received such, it appears, Regina, we have to review our strategy. I thought that the government had rejected the proposal of taxation on internet banking. We may wish to look into this. But again, Henry Mugisha, what you're saying, Mr. Bazira, what you're saying is very interesting. That in a country where you're trying to bring majority of your population to join the internet, to be able to increase your taxation in terms of sales. Taxation of internet should not be about taxing our internet banking or what. No, it's about taxing the big players like you saw. I shared a slide on how much the United States was getting by taxing Facebook alone. Not by taxing the US citizens that were using data or what, but by taxing the platforms themselves. That is where we should be. That's where the conversation and the political should be looking at. Moses, the presentation can hear our sounds, but this government, where that's the issue. Yes, Mugabe is talking about social media has enabled extraterritorial digital data collection by multinational companies. Exactly, that's very true. How can African countries be empowered to protect this unchanged and unchallenged cross-border data leakages? And indeed, Mugabe, that's a very brilliant argument. Thank you so much for raising it. Just like we are having data leakages, it is the same way we are having tax leakages and erosion of taxation rights by African countries, which are actually, by the way, giving the biggest raw material in terms of data to this company. So, and to do that, it is to ensure that we are not hoodwinked by the OECD process. While we appreciate the OECD process about digital taxation, we should again be strong and cautious to ensure that the binding processes at the multilateral level, at the World Trade Organization and African Continental Free Trade Area are giving us the right of taxation of e-commerce. That is very important. Does Africa, Andrew is asking, Comrade Andrew, it's good to see you here. Andrew is asking, does Africa stand a chance to compete and benefit from digital trade or its other exploitation venture that we have seen as wealth of Silicon Valley increased to unbelievable levels? Indeed, the wealth of Silicon Valley has increased to unbelievable levels, but yes, Africa can stand a chance to compete only if we get our, what my boss will say, our act together, only if we look into our integration to e-commerce, not as consumers of e-commerce platforms and e-commerce products, but also as suppliers and producers of e-commerce platforms. How often, for example, have we used Chikubo Online and Nakasero Online to do our trading than Jumia? Jumia is largely, again, not African. Comrade Andrew, I think you remember, Jumia, the biggest operator is German, with Nigeria just owning a few shares. So yes, by having our own inbred e-commerce platform, but also most importantly, ensuring that the e-commerce policies allow us to have taxation rights, but also trading rights. This will be critical when we are talking about digital value chains, that we are not only consumers of e-commerce goods, but also producers and suppliers of e-commerce goods. How can our courts deal with the cross-jurisdictional nature of e-platform in case of disputes or smart contracts? This is very important, Ivan, and this is not being handled in our regional trade agreements like the CFTA, and it is an important issue we need to look into. If I buy something from Jumia and it comes in a shape that is not right, how do I complain? How do I, how do I resolve disputes? That's very important, and our dispute mechanisms need to be updated, take into consideration digital trade. Sorry about that, Richard. My internet is unstable. I'm sorry, but I will share the presentation so that you can keep in touch. Henry Mugisha is raising a very important question. Google and Facebook makes more money outside of the US. That's very true. Google and Facebook, including other big tech companies, they make more money outside the United States, but unfortunately, it is the United States which has the biggest percentage share of profits and also percentage share of taxation rights, even though the money is not made outside out in the USA. And like you're saying, again, this brings us into the extractivist digital economy that we are having. It is again like they used to extract rubber, cotton, gold, diamonds, and other natural resources, including slaves from Africa. Again, the current mode of e-commerce is looking at the same extractivist and exploitative nature, where data is now being collected for free by our will, and they are using it to make millions of money when we are not getting anything out of the data, which is rightfully ours. Okay, Andrew, about the issues of fair competition and the predatory and impractical economic system of capitalism. Yes, this is very important. And like you're saying, digitalization technology is the engine powering the fourth industrial revolution. That's very true. We have to offer anything? Yes, we have to offer anything because, again, digitalization does not depend on its own. It depends on data, on the data it collects from when Andrew is logging onto his TikTok account, or when he's creating an Instagram account, or if he's sharing digital content on his YouTube or Facebook channel. That is how they depend on us. And by ensuring that we control our own data, by ensuring that we have access to this data, by ensuring that our privacy to this data is promoted and protected, then we are able to offer everything in the e-commerce. Chinji Eri is asking, could the current impasse between Uganda government and Facebook be driven by a desire by our government to bargain for a better deal from Facebook towards the country? Chinji, I do not know, but the only issue is, well, we don't know what we are not being told, but the issue is blocking Facebook to be able to bargain a better deal is not really, to me, I think, what is the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to ensure that the rules in avenues like the United Nations and African Continental Free Trade Area and the global trade systems like World Trade Organization ensure that they put in place rules that make it obligatory, that make it important that countries are able to benefit from that. Countries like that, platforms like Facebook are able to pay their fair share of taxes to countries where they are operating, where they are users. Thank you so much, Bwana Dennis Agawa from Ministry of Finance for the insights. And Mugabe Ivan is saying, is internet necessity or a luxury? Mugabe Ivan, I think I will leave this to you to see whether internet is a necessity or a luxury. But again, like Sam Tumugache had put it in, internet is really a necessity. Thank you so much, my dear Judith, for the compliments. E-commerce innovation would be a good project, but the government should first work on regulations of internet technology. Exactly. Jerry Okero, you're raising a very important issue. I had an argument with the person of NITA Uganda that, you see, why Uganda, for example, decided to block Facebook is because Facebook was being used as a tool to mobilize dissidents. And I told them, hey, wait, we have UCC. UCC is given taxpayers money to ensure that internet users and social media users are protected on the internet. So really, blocking of Facebook was not really about blocking it to use to create insecurities. No, I think it is a governance issue, and the role of UCC should have been critical. And like I always say, actually, the government still owes us. It promised us the internet that every day from 10 p.m., from 4 p.m. up to 6 a.m. of the following day, we shall be able to use internet from its ministries because such internet is idle. The then Minister of Information and Technology, National Guidance, Honorable Frank Tumwebase, had promised that in his tenure. 5 years on the road when he promised that, he has left to join agriculture, and that has not materialized. So government to Jibanja, instead of taxing us, we should actually be demanding for our internet rights. Thank you, Richard Obedi. Thank you so much. Now that that's local content won't be tolerated, it's a bad notion. These most actors in the content won't have strategic fit. Yes, you're right. Obed, you're right. Richard, you're right. The issue of local content is very tricky in how it is going to apply in the African Continental Free Trade Area, but it's about negotiating on what components of local content should we look into. And like you're right, safety has already been made tremendous inroads with big players, and it will be disadvantageous to most of the actors in the continent. This is very brilliant, Richard. Thank you so much. Indeed, I posted on my LinkedIn account, and I was showing, you see, the UK government was proudly indicating on Facebook, on LinkedIn, that it has signed the first country to sign a memorandum of understanding with the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. And I was saying, look, we need to be careful of these of the intentions of these countries, because the USA and the UK are the biggest actors of trade in Africa, and so are using internet and e-commerce to boost their foothold in Africa is one of the avenues. Africa should, Julius Arugu, Africa should start positioning itself to adopt new technology. I agree with you. Adaptation to new technology and equipping human resource with skills to adapt to tax the new innovation is critical. But again, this can only be possible if we negotiate rules that allow for technology transfer, that allow for skills transfer, but also that allow for taxation rights. Even if we have new technology and we don't know how to use it, and the rules are not allowing us to be able to tax global actors, then this won't be able to help us. Thank you so much, Lilian Adong, for the insights and for the compliments. Regina, I think this is what I can be able to read. If I have forgotten any question or any comment, or if I've not spoken anything, I'm sorry, but I can be able to do that. Thank you so much. Over to you, Regina.
Thank you, Africa. Henry, is your hand up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, I just have a few thoughts I wanted to share with us. And my first question is, do we have government discussing this kind of thing? Does anybody know whether this kind of conversation is happening within the government circles? That for me is my starter. Secondly, what strategies are we putting in place to at least be able to influence our position in respect to internet at WTO, e-commerce at WTO? And the issue, how are we supporting URA in coming up with the e-commerce discussions? The other one would be, how can we influence the local internet providers to be able to give us faster internet? Because to me, that's one of the limitations we have. And also the issue of having to demonstrate to government that taxing internet is counterproductive. We need to come up with some kind of convincing policy document to try to work along to influence government to at least lift the tax on internet. I'll also check with the Bank of Uganda to see whether the tax that I received was for the platform that they give us or for my transactions. I'll be informing you later on what it's about. Thank you. Over to you.
Africa, do you want to throw some?
Yes, I absolutely. I can't fail to respond to that brilliant insights. Thank you so much, Abwana Henry. I enjoyed listening to you, and I'm glad that you are seeing it with me that taxing internet in an era where countries are struggling to make internet as more affordable as possible is counterproductive. Indeed, it is counterproductive. When you look at, for example, Rwanda, I am sorry, I am over referring to Rwanda, but it is better to compare yourself with the neighbor first before you can compare with an external person. Rwanda, the cost of internet to Rwanda is, when COVID came in, Rwanda reduced its internet data to 3%. Kenya had to lower it up to, I think, 4 or 5%. Uganda, you are hovering to 12%. Whoa, that is so exploitative, and that is so, to me, I think, and like Henry was saying, it is counterproductive because, again, you tax people out of business. But instead of people embracing e-commerce, even reduce on the spread of of the virus, they actually shun e-commerce. They move away from e-commerce, which is counterproductive. Yes, the issue of strategies being put in place to influence e-commerce in WTO. Yes, it is exciting to, I should say, it's exciting to note that Uganda has been one of the countries that have rejected the current proposals of e-commerce in the World Trade Organization on grounds that e-commerce, the current proposals do not give us taxation rights, do not give us inclusive trade rights, and do not give us, leeway over being competitive in the e-commerce value chains. But of course, things are changing, and this is why it's important to ensure that we follow process, we follow as civil society, as researchers, we undertake engagements to ensure that we influence this process, because again, what we have rejected in the WTO is again now what we are accepting in the African Continental Free Trade Area. Then it does not create many changes. So, and again, the issue of government discussions, whether they are happening. Yes, discussions are happening, but again, they are happening in kind of a closed forum. Often information is not easily shared. And again, in terms of awareness and the proactiveness of actors is challenging. When you, for example, why am I saying that? For example, when you hear that Uganda is negotiating e-commerce in the African Continental Free Trade Area, when you are a tax person, an organization working on tax, well, unless you know that there is a linkage between tax and e-commerce and DRM, that's when you can only be, involved. Unless you are a person looking at GBV, a human rights organization that is looking at GBV, and you understand that understanding GBV in the internet world in Industry 4.0 is important because it reinforces GBV, then you won't be able to, you won't see reason why you should participate in the discussions. So there's need to, again, which I believe this conversation that we are having is very important to raise appreciation of people, the relevance of e-commerce and these processes on DRM, on taxation, but also on other aspects of development. Regina?
Thank you, Africa. I know this conversation has gone on past the time we had agreed, but I think that shows the interest and the fact that we're all willing to learn. Thank you very much. I've seen the comments from Ivan, from Agava, EIT, I thank you for joining us, Richard, from Sam, and I hope you can join us tomorrow to take this conversation forward. For now, have maybe a good lunch, a good wishing you well in your engagements, and see you tomorrow, same time. God bless. Thank you. Thank you, Africa.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much, everyone. You've been very exciting. God bless you.
This was an interesting discussion. Bye-bye.